Hi, I'm Jessie and I'm a content specialist, and this is a series of interviews with very interesting people and industry experts. Hi Bonnie, how are you?
Hi, Jessie. It's great to meet you and
And you.
answer any questions you have.
Can you please tell me about yourself and how you got into the cyber intelligence industry?
I think that's actually a really interesting story because my background was in languages, not in cyber. But I grew up in San Jose, California at a time when the Silicon Valley was being created. So my first job was actually at Atari in the day with the people that invented Centipede and some of the other programs that we all like to play, the games that we played. And I was working primarily in the home computer division at the time when they were developing, I think it became the Atari Amigo, which really didn't go anywhere. But from there, I moved to another company that was called Sourcem. And interestingly enough, they created the Premier spreadsheet package that was on the market in the day in the early 80s that would look remarkably like Microsoft Excel now. So that was, so I came a long way back to the cyber world. Throughout my career, obviously computers continued to become more and more important, as did cell phones. And in the late, in about 2009, I was able to move over to an organization with the agency called the Information Ops Center. And that role, there was a huge movement of resources and attention on the growing cyber industry and the real cyber threat that was confronting the United States and that the United States was finally starting to confront. And so we were looking at how cyber was going to impact everything we did in the world, but certainly in the intelligence industry and in the United States, and start to learn more about the threat and the offense on it and how we could make both of them work to our advantage. And so, so through there, I grew more and more interested in how this industry was moving forward and really what it was about cyber that was going to change the face of everything we did. So if you ask, I mean, I learned to type on a manual typewriter, but the cell phone and smart technology changed the way we do business in the world, and certainly changed the way we had to start thinking about who we were and how we showed up and where we showed up in so many aspects.
Can you just give a brief into kind of what your role was at the CIA?
Sure. So I had many roles. I started off as an operations person, so really looking at the threat to U.S. interests. And so much of the role I played throughout my career was how the United States needed to understand the threat and confront the threat in so many ways. So in the early days, it was all about people and how you got to the information that people held. And in the later days, it became where was the information stored? Because virtually, and I'll quote a former colleague of mine, virtually everything in this day and age is on a computer in a database somewhere in data. You just have to figure out where it is and how to get to it. And so, so if you ask me, you know, that's really where the criminal enterprise has gone so much in the cyberspace as well, is that they recognize that everything that is to be gotten is in somebody's data somewhere, or on their computer, or their smartphone technology somewhere. They just have to figure out how to get to it.
How have you seen hardware security issues play out over your career?
So here's the thing that I think is really critical to understand in the cyber world, and that is a lot of people have this idea that there's this Hollywood event going on where people are sitting there hacking and hacking back, and there's this real-time event occurring. At the end of the day, in order to attack you, I have to get into your systems. If I can't get into your systems because you've got it firewalled or otherwise impeded, the weakest link is my greatest advantage. And so many times the weakest link is getting to a person who will plant something on your system, or a person who will introduce a hardware capability that allows me to access your system. We spend a lot of time securing by firewall and network the ability to get into our data or into our systems. We tend to not pay a lot of attention to the hardware that people are using to get to those systems. And so if I can get to your hardware, it's as good as you know, as gold, because if I can get to the hardware, maybe I can bypass some of the other pieces because it won't be recognized as a threat.
Where do you see emerging threats in this area?
we focus so much on the software side of the business. If I can secure my data, if I can do access control, if I can do all of these things, everybody's looking for a silver bullet to get someplace. But the real threat comes with assuming that you've got the silver bullet. Complacency will get you got every time. I only, as an attacker, have to be successful one time. You as a defender have to defend me every single time. Because once I'm in, I can go anywhere. You have to keep me out every time. And it doesn't matter how successful you are. If I get in once, then I can make your success look like it's nothing.
Is hardware security a relevant topic just for agencies and state-sponsored entities?
I think hardware is a relevant topic for anybody that wants to, basically guard their information. You look at it now. If I can somehow or other implant something on your system through the hardware, then I own your system. I mean, the person that's there is there. So if you, one of the things that I know that a lot of companies are struggling with is visibility of what they have. There's a lot of aging technology out there, but because it's so expensive to recapitalize constantly, there's things being added in and added in and added in. If you don't have a very robust asset management system, you actually don't know what's been added into your system. And so there's a lot of aging hardware sitting out there that's very vulnerable just by virtue of the fact that it's not state of the art, and the art keeps moving forward at rapid speed. We used to say, basically everything is at the speed of cyber. Well, the speed of cyber is really, really hard to catch up with. You're always chasing it. You're never in front of it. And so if you've got aging hardware sitting out there that somehow or other isn't being paid attention to, and you have no visibility, that creates a vulnerability that really is your weakest flank.
How do supply chains play a role in hardware security?
There's so many different pieces and parts of everything that we build now. If you aren't aware of where it's coming from or who's manufacturing it, or somehow or other where it's been along the way, you have no ability to understand what kind of vulnerabilities you're introducing in your system. So much time is spent managing and assessing, and I would actually say assessing to manage risk. It's risk of data, it's risk of systems, it's risk to everything. So many companies' biggest, I think, threat comes against breaching their data. It could be personal information. It could be somehow or other their R&D. It could be their IP, their intellectual property. Their data is really their gold. And if you cannot secure that gold and you don't know what the threat is, or you're not accepting that there is risk, the opportunity to be surprised in a terrible way is always there. And it's a great way to meet new people you never wanted to meet.
Why do you find Sapio systems relevant for today's challenges?
I'm a big advocate of a layered defense strategy. I always have been. And I'm not a believer in silver bullets. I don't think they exist. I think that the more you think that you aren't able to be penetrated, the easier it is to get to you. Again, complacency gets you every time. I think understanding that there's a first layer that you could work to stop intruders at is probably something that most people don't consider, but they should be considering. If you're not looking at all the aspects of how you can keep people out, you leave the opportunity that creates a crime. Sometimes, and this sounds really probably not the nicest way to say it, sometimes it's okay to make yourself a little harder than the guy next to you. Because a lot of the criminal enterprise is looking for the easy target. Don't make yourself the easy target, make yourself a more difficult target. So they go after the easier target. If you're not securing the hardware, you're leaving an avenue open that could somehow or other you could be gotten to as a target of opportunity versus a harder target.
Do you have any advice for other young women looking to build their career in the cybersecurity industry?
Stop counting yourself out. A lot of young women think I need to be good at math, I need to be good at science, I need to be good at all of these other things. There's a huge role for everybody in cyber. Diversity is what makes all the difference. In the organization that I was in, we viewed diversity as our greatest strength, not our greatest weakness. So I would encourage young women and older women to take a look at where they could be working better in the cyberspace. Stop counting yourself out. because I think we do that a lot. We tend to look at the requirements and we look at all of the things that we don't do as opposed to accepting that we could learn to do more. And so we step back without ever really allowing ourselves to step forward in a meaningful way and really enjoy the space that we're in. I was never the smartest one in the rooms with the people that were briefing me on cyber capabilities. What I did do is ask a lot of questions, and I did try very hard to understand why it was important to go in the directions we were going.
Okay, thank you so much for all the great insight and advice into the industry and for the time that you took today.
Thanks, Jessie.